Okay, today we are going to design a sync lead. This is a pretty simple patch to build, but it's good because it will allow us to explore a few sound design techniques that we haven't really looked at in some of the other lectures. So let's get right into this. The first thing that we're going to do is go up to our oscillator 1, and we're going to choose one of these virtual analog wavetables, and we're going to choose the pulse saw sync. So what does this mean? Basically, we are emulating the schematics of an analog synthesizer in which a master oscillator is modulating a slave oscillator. So practically speaking, we have this wavetable here on the left, and we can choose the position between pulse and saw wave. So we're going to move this maybe not all the way to the left, but maybe to about 9 o'clock. And you can hear that really high-pitched harmonic. That's because this master oscillator sync wheel is on full right. So if we start to pull this down, you'll start to hear how the harmonics are shifting. Okay, so that's the sound that we want. So what we're going to do now is set up an envelope to deal with this sync knob in order to create that sort of wow sound. Before we do that, let's set up our fourth envelope, which is the default envelope modulating the amplitude section. And let's just tweak this a little bit. We're going to turn off the attack, pull that down all the way. Make sure that your sustain level is set to full. And you can leave the release where it is. So that's that. And now let's move on to envelope 3. So we can take envelope number 3 and put it in one of the modulation targets on the sync knob. And so we want our destination to be about right there. So we're going to bring the knob down all the way and then increase the modulation range to maybe about 10 or 11. Okay, let's hear how that sounds now. So already we're getting a little bit of that sync sound, but we want to tweak our envelope a little bit to really bring out some of the character of that pulse wave. So I'm going to increase the attack time so that it has a little bit of swell into it. Just like that, you can sort of hear it increase at the beginning. And then you can increase the decay time a little bit too. All right, so we're starting to develop this sound pretty well. Now let's open up another oscillator, and let's drop it down a pitch, an octave. And we will choose the same wavetable. Bring it over here to the left. You can, depending on your taste, you can have it about the same position as oscillator 1 or a little bit further to the left, really whatever is best for you. Now, what I'm going to do, instead of just using the same envelope to modulate the sync wheel, I'm going to use a subtly different but still similar shaped envelope on an oscillator 2. So one sort of quick way to do that is just to copy your envelope, go over to envelope 2, paste it, and it'll drop it right in there. And now you can make some small adjustments to this, maybe a little less attack time, a little bit more decay time, maybe a little release. And you can use that envelope here on the sync knob. And you can either have a larger range, like this, a smaller range. And then you can also adjust the balance of your amplitude here if you want less of that low octave. Or you can change the pitch of this oscillator to -5. You have that sort of chordal structure. Or you can leave it at 0 if you just want to double it up. I like it an octave lower, so I'm going to keep it that way. So as it stands now, we already have a pretty cool sync lead, but we can play with it a little bit more to have a little bit more fun. So on oscillator 3, I'm going to choose any of these sort of talking speech wavetables. We'll try modern talking for now, and let's just deactivate these so we can deal with just this one. And I'm going to choose the oscillator mode formant. Now, this sounds pretty cool an octave lower as well. That gives you a little bit more of that fuzzy, buzzy kind of wave sound. And now you can take either envelope 2 or 3 and drop it into this intensity knob. And you can have it modulate over the entire course of of the knob or just a part of it. Maybe it's a little too much. Okay. So I like it an octave lower like that. And then we'll try one other thing to give some movement over time for the notes that we do hold out. And so I'm going to take LFO number 5 and assign it to this wavetable position. And I'm just going to put this at about 2 p.m. like this, and then create a range that's not too big, but just gives me a little bit of movement. And I'm going to choose the crossfade curve of the sine wave. We're going to assign the internal envelope within the LFO number 5 to this rate knob. And we'll bring this down to about 9 p.m. And then we'll create a range to right a little bit past noon, like that. So what's going to happen now is this rate knob is going to start sort of slower, and it's going to increase over time as determined by this internal envelope, since we have a slow attack and then a full decay that goes on till infinity. That's the way these are set up. Let's hear that for now. So let's move this up a little bit. So you can hear it well with the crossfade curve set to the sawtooth wave, but we actually want the sine wave, so we'll have this up here like this. We can also assign this internal envelope to the amplitude and have it go over the entire course of the knob like this, so that this modulation isn't active at the beginning and it sort of swells in. That means that this wavetable position knob in oscillator 3 will just remain where it is, and then over time it will swell into this movement back and forth according to the sine wave. As well, the rate of that movement will increase over time. So that's how this will sound. I might move this down and then increase the range a little bit. So that's pretty fun. We're having some fun now. We need to set up a couple of these global parameters in order to get the best sound. So we're going to choose the voicing page, and I'm going to choose monophonic as well as legato triller. And remember that legato triller means that when I play a note and then I play another note while the first is held down, when I let go of the second note, it drops back down to the first. Sounds like this. Cool. Now, depending on your taste, you can play with the glide time. I personally, for this patch, don't want any glide. I just like the way that the sort of the harshness of each sound coming back in sounds. So, but if you like that glide, then you can adjust your glide time in the oscillator general page, and we can hear some of the differences now. Add in some glide time. And remember that the equal switch means that the glide time between any interval of notes will be equal. The rate switch means that the glide time will be a particular rate, and so an interval of a higher interval between two notes, the glide time will be longer. Or you can have the glide time just a little bit up like that. Okay. Now, there are a few other things you can do to set up some macro controls to have some fun. So we can assign a phase modulation to the second oscillator like this. You can hear that tinniness come in if I deactivate these two. Okay, but for me, that takes away some of the bassiness of that oscillator, which is why I set it up in the first place. So I'm not too crazy about that. But what you can do is assign your macro control number 2 over here, pull the knob down, and then bring up the range like that, and then you can just call this phase, or mod osc, or whatever helps you remember what it is, and that way I can have it deactivated because it's down all the way. And I can adjust that with my macro control. You can also set up a dimension expander. Bring down the size a little bit, bring down the dry wet. Set your macro control number 3 to this dry wet mix and call this dimension. And that way you can bring in this effect with your macro control. Or you can have it totally dry. Okay, so those are some of the subtle changes that you can make in order to make this sound your own. But that is a sort of classic way of building a sync lead. So have some fun with that. We'll see you in the next lecture.